He left you for someone else, and the thoughts in your head are spinning out of control. What did she have that I didn't? Was I not enough? Could I have done something differently? And while you're busy trying to make sense of what happened, he's off living his new chapter, seemingly unbothered. But let's slow down for a second. This isn't about him. This is about you. Because here's the truth most people never tell you. The moment someone chooses someone else over you, you don't lose your value. You just lose your place in their story. That's all. And believe me, that's not the story you were meant to be in forever anyway. The worst thing you can do right now is give away your power by obsessing over a comparison that shouldn't even exist. You're sitting there, stacking yourself up against someone else, imagining her as the woman he chose over you, like there's a competition and you lost. But you didn't lose. What you lost was someone who wasn't willing to keep showing up for you. And that is not a loss. That's a reveal. The real moment of transformation happens when you decide to shift the power back to you. Because right now, whether you realize it or not, your energy is still orbiting around him. You're mentally checking what he's doing, who he's with, whether they're happy, and all of that keeps you emotionally tethered to someone who is no longer investing in you. So how do you break that? You reclaim your focus. You stop treating this like the end of the road and start treating it like the beginning of the most important evolution of your life. And that begins with asking yourself a better question. Not, why did he leave? But rather, what kind of life can I build now that he's no longer the center of it? That question changes everything. See, the version of you that existed in that relationship was tied to a dynamic. You had routines, patterns, maybe even a vision of the future that had his name all over it. But now you get to create something from scratch. And while that might feel terrifying at first, it's also powerful because it means you get to define your value on your own terms. You get to build a version of your life that is so rich, so exciting, and so deeply connected to who you really are that no one who walks away from it can take anything of worth with them. Here's where people go wrong. They think, I'll show him. I'll become more attractive, more successful, more this, more that. And while, yes, leveling up can be an amazing motivator, it's not about proving your worth to him. It's about rediscovering your worth for you. Because when you try to grow just to prove something to someone else, you're still giving your power away. He's still in the driver's seat. But when you grow, because you deserve to feel amazing, to be seen, to be happy, and to feel full with or without anyone in your life, that's when the shift really happens. Let him think he's in control right now. Let him enjoy the novelty. Let him romanticize his new choice. That's fine. You don't need to correct his story. You don't need to fix it. Because the most attractive energy on the planet is someone who doesn't flinch when life doesn't go their way, but instead leans in and decides to become stronger, deeper, and more aligned with their truth. And make no mistake, when you stop chasing, when you stop seeking closure, when you stop rehearsing the pain in your mind, something incredible starts to happen. You stop reacting and start creating. You begin investing that energy back into your friendships, your career, your passions, your health, your peace. You realize that your life isn't some half-finished draft that he walked out of. It's a blank page you get to fill with something better. And the moment he notices that your life is no longer orbiting him, that's when the power dynamic starts to shift. That's when the silence speaks louder than any words. Because instead of watching you spiral, he watches you rise. He watches you glow in spaces he no longer has access to. And he realizes that what he walked away from wasn't someone desperate to be chosen. It was someone powerful enough to choose themselves. So stop trying to make him regret it. Start making yourself proud. Start building something beautiful, not in spite of what he did, but because you are still here, still standing, still capable of something amazing. You don't need closure from someone who couldn't even give you commitment. What you need is clarity, that your worth isn't up for debate just because someone couldn't see it. Right now is not the time to chase, to plead, or to compete. It's the time to rise, to recalibrate, and to refocus. Not for revenge, not for validation, but because the best story you'll ever write is the one where you don't need someone else to make you feel whole. Let him go. Let the fantasy break. Let yourself bloom. Because when you shift the power back to you, everything changes. Don't give him the gift of your jealousy. You might not realize it, but the moment you let your jealousy show, the moment you spiral into that emotional frenzy of why her and not me? What does she have that I don't? How could he just move on like that? You're handing over your power. And worse, you're feeding his ego. Because now, in his mind, he's become the prize. He's seeing that you're still emotionally invested, still hurting, still wrapped up in the idea of him. And whether consciously or not, that gives him a sense of importance in your life that he hasn't earned anymore. See, when someone leaves you for someone else, it's tempting to try and fight for their attention. You want to prove that you were better, more loving, more loyal. But here's the truth no one tells you. Jealousy is a mirror. The more you fixate on them, the more you lose sight of you. You start to compare your chapter 20 to her chapter 1. You start to invent narratives in your head about how happy they must be, how perfect they must look together, how fast he's moved on. But none of those stories help you grow. None of them bring your dignity back, and none of them change the fact that he walked away. What if, instead of letting that jealousy eat you up from the inside, you saw it for what it is, just a feeling, not a fact, a wave that you let crash and then let go. You don't have to act on it. You don't have to text him some angry message or try to one-up her on Instagram or seek revenge by flirting with his friends. That's exactly what he expects. That's what keeps the emotional connection alive, negative or not. And you don't want that, because as long as you're playing in that emotional sandbox, he still owns a piece of your story. You want to really make an impact? You want to turn this whole thing on its head? Don't react. Don't rage. Don't compete. Be calm. Be collected. Be shockingly, refreshingly silent. Because that silence, that's where he starts to feel the shift. That's when it hits him. Wait, why isn't she reacting? That's when the new relationship loses a little bit of its shine. When you're not texting, not stalking, not showing pain, he doesn't get the dopamine hit of feeling desired by two women. He only gets silence. And silence is powerful. It's a strange truth, but jealousy, when you wear it on your sleeve, doesn't make you look passionate. It makes you look insecure. It makes you seem like someone who can be shaken by a distraction, by another woman. And let's be honest, if he could be taken that easily, do you really want to fight for that? Do you really want to show up emotionally bleeding over someone who had no problem turning the page before you even closed the chapter? No. You want to hold your value high. You want to say through your actions, I won't chase someone who can't see what I bring to the table. I won't compete for someone who made the mistake of thinking I'm replaceable. That's not ego, that's self-respect. That's understanding that the person who truly sees your worth doesn't need to be convinced. They don't leave you for someone shinier. They stay and grow with you through the imperfect, the real, and the raw. The irony is, the less jealous you seem, the more he starts to question everything, because jealousy validates the choice he made. It makes him feel like he was that desirable, that important, that you can't function without him. But when you're poised, when you're glowing up in silence, when you're focused on yourself instead of his new relationship, he's left with nothing but his own thoughts. And in those quiet moments, when the honeymoon phase with her starts to fade, that's when he remembers you. The way you loved, the way you challenged him, the way you made him feel alive, in a way surface-level connections never do. That's when the cracks start to show. And you didn't even have to do anything to cause it. You just didn't give him the gift of your jealousy. You refused to validate his decision. And now he's sitting with a question he never thought he'd ask. Did I mess up? Here's the beautiful part. You don't need that question to be answered, because by then you'll be too busy building a life so rich, so full, so aligned with who you are, that his presence or absence becomes irrelevant. You'll be surrounded by people who see you. You'll be fueled by passions that light you up. And you'll know that someone leaving doesn't diminish your value. It just makes space for someone who knows how rare you are. So the next time jealousy bubbles up, don't suppress it. Acknowledge it. Feel it. But then choose not to act from it. Instead, redirect your energy. Go work out. Go build something. Call someone who reminds you of your worth. Move. Create. Breathe. And remember that letting go of someone who couldn't keep you is never a loss. It's a graduation. The best response to someone who left you for someone else is not showing them pain. It's showing them peace. When you've been left for someone else, there's this immediate feeling of wanting to explain yourself, of wanting to reach out and prove your worth. We all feel it. You want to remind him of everything he's leaving behind. You want to say, look at what you had and look at what you're giving up. But here's the truth, doing that only gives him the upper hand. It confirms that you're still attached to him. It confirms that his choice to leave you has power over your emotions. But here's the thing, your value doesn't change based on his actions. You see, when we want to show someone how amazing we are, we think the key is convincing them with words. We want to text them, call them, write them, that long message that tells them everything they need to know about how much they've hurt us, about all the things they're missing out on. We think that if we just put it all out there, they'll have this moment of clarity. They'll realize they made a mistake and everything will go back to how it was. But here's the kicker. All that does is give him a front row seat to your emotional turmoil. You're giving him an opportunity to see just how much you care. And in that moment, whether consciously or unconsciously, he knows he still has a place in your world. Instead, let's talk about the true power move, showing, not telling. The moment you stop talking about how amazing you are and start being amazing, you stop begging for attention and start commanding it. Don't chase, don't explain, don't try to convince him to come back. Instead, shift the narrative by making yourself an unmissable presence. You know how you hear about people going through difficult times and coming out on the other side completely transformed? That's the goal here. Don't just tell him that you're stronger now. Show him. Don't just say you're doing better. Let your actions do the talking. Let him watch from the sidelines as you evolve into someone he never thought you could be. When you level up, he will be forced to confront the version of you that exists without him. You need to understand this. The more you focus on proving your worth to him, the less you show the world who you truly are. And the less you focus on your own growth, the more you begin to show him that he was the one who defined you. So here's the secret. Shift your energy from him to you. Pour it into things that make you feel alive, things that help you grow, the relationships that lift you up, the hobbies you always wanted to explore but put on hold, the places you've always wanted to go but never made time for. Invest in your own well-being, in your own growth, in your own joy. That's the best kind of revenge. Living your best life without needing him to validate it. When you stop worrying about his opinion and focus on living authentically, something powerful happens. People begin to notice your friends see a different side of you. You begin to meet new people. And if he's still watching, he'll start to see the shift in you too. He'll wonder what happened to her. He'll wonder how you managed to move forward without him. And that's where the power really lies. They might think that if you just show up as the same version of yourself that he once loved, you'll somehow win him back. But here's what most people don't realize. He didn't leave you because you weren't enough. He left because he thought he could. He thought he could replace what he had with someone new, with a different situation, with a different person. He thought the grass would be greener. But when you step into your power and become the best version of yourself without him, he starts to realize that he can't replace you. And that's what you want. Not for him to come running back. That's not the goal. The goal is for you to become someone who cannot be replaced. Someone who doesn't need validation from someone else because your sense of self-worth is built from within. You'll get to the point where his memory fades and you'll find that you are actually grateful for the way things ended. Because in truth, his departure was the catalyst you needed to become the best version of yourself. He left because he didn't see it. But now you do. The power lies not in convincing him that you're worthy of his attention, but in knowing you're worthy no matter what. It's about being so grounded in your own strength, so confident in who you are, that no one's absence can take away your sense of self. And when you reach that point, you will be untouchable. He might still wonder what happened, and he might even come back. But by then, you'll be so far ahead in your own life that you won't be looking back. This journey isn't about getting him back. It's about discovering how whole you can be on your own. When you stop begging for validation and start thriving on your own, you send the message that you're not someone to be settled for. You're someone to be chosen. And if he didn't see that, then that's his loss. So take this moment not as an ending, but as a beginning. Start living for you and let him see the incredible life you've built without him. Watch as the fantasy he created in his mind about what he thought he could have begins to fall apart. And when it does, you'll know that you didn't just move on from him, you became someone even better than he ever imagined. What if I told you that all of that is exactly what he wants you to do? He wants you to obsess over her, over him, over the situation. Why? Because as long as you're doing that, you're giving him control. You're allowing him to live rent-free in your mind while he's off living his life. But here's the thing. The moment you start focusing on you and not him, not her, that's when the power shifts. And not in the way you think. It's not about trying to show him you've moved on or that you're doing better. It's about creating distance. Not just physical distance, but emotional and mental distance. When you're out of sight, out of mind, you force him to remember what he lost without you having to do a thing. The biggest mistake we make in these situations is to keep checking in on what he's doing, how he's doing it, and most importantly, how she's doing it. We put so much of our focus on what's happening with them that we forget about ourselves. But that's the trap. The moment you stop focusing on them, that's when things start to unravel for him. You see, when he leaves you for someone else, he's stepping into a fantasy, one that's all new, exciting, and shiny. But fantasy doesn't last. It's temporary. It's not real. Real life kicks in, and when the novelty of the new relationship fades, what's left is the deep, enduring connection he once had with you, the kind of connection he can't recreate just by switching partners. That here's the twist. He won't realize that connection is gone until you're no longer around to remind him of it. And you won't be around if you keep clinging to the idea that you need to show him how great you're doing, how amazing your life is without him. No, the way you disrupt the fantasy isn't by flaunting your success, but by becoming unavailable. You've got to make yourself scarce, emotionally, physically, socially. Not in a petty or vindictive way, but in a way that says, I have moved on and my life is full without you in it. Think about it. The moment he notices you've stopped responding, stopped texting, stopped chasing him, something begins to shift in his mind. It's a powerful thing. And here's why. When you're always there, always answering, always making sure he knows you're still an option, he never feels that he has to put in any real effort. But when you start pulling back, it creates space. And that space forces him to consider, wait a minute, what if I made a mistake? Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably wondering if this will actually make him regret it, or if he'll even care at all. You want him to feel the sting of what he's lost. But here's the thing. It's not about whether he regrets it now or not. It's about what happens when you give him the space to see you for who you really are, without the emotional attachment clouding his judgment. The more distant you become, the more he'll realize that he didn't just leave a relationship, he left someone who had their own life, their own passions, their own sense of purpose. And when he begins to sense that, the fantasy he's living in starts to crumble. You might think that he's got it all figured out with the new person, that this new relationship is the answer to everything he's ever wanted. But here's the cold truth. The grass isn't always greener. It just looks that way from a distance. He's in a new relationship where everything is exciting and fresh, but what happens when the routine sets in? What happens when the excitement fades? He will begin to realize that he traded something real, something deep, for something that was just a temporary escape. And by the time he realizes it, you'll already be so far ahead in your own life that he won't know how to catch up. That's when the real power shifts. Because here's what he starts to feel when you become unavailable. The sense that he might have taken you for granted. He starts remembering how you were there for him when no one else was. He starts to wonder if he made a mistake by thinking that someone else could replace the depth of your connection. It's not about playing games or trying to make him jealous. It's about living your life in a way that doesn't revolve around him. And let me tell you, when he realizes that you're living without him, it's a reality check he can't ignore. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not suggesting you sit around and wait for him to come crawling back. That's not what this is about. This is about recognizing that you're valuable and deserving of a life that doesn't need to be validated by anyone else. By pulling back, you stop putting yourself in a position where you're constantly trying to prove your worth to someone who already left. When you make yourself scarce, you stop being the safety net he knows he can always fall back on. You force him to look at his life without you in it, and that's when the cracks start to appear. Let's be honest here. Most men don't fully realize what they had until they no longer have it. When you're still showing up, still emotionally available, still fighting for him, you're giving him zero space to see what life is like without you. But the moment you stop, the moment you let him feel the void you left, that's when he starts questioning everything. That's when the fantasy starts to lose its luster. Here's the kicker. You don't need to do anything except live your life. You don't need to make grand gestures or try to get his attention. You just need to start living in a way that doesn't revolve around him. You've got so much more going for you than just a relationship with him. And when you start focusing on that, on yourself, on your goals, on your future, you'll realize you don't need him at all. In fact, you might come to a point where you look at him and think, I'm better off without you. And when that happens, when you've built a life so fulfilling that you no longer need his validation or his presence, that's when the game changes. He'll look around and he'll see someone who's moved on, who's thriving, and who doesn't need him to be happy. And in that moment, the fantasy he once believed in will fall apart. Let me tell you something that most people won't. When someone leaves you for someone else, the initial sting is brutal, no doubt. Your mind starts racing, comparing, analyzing, asking, what does she have that I didn't? And in the background, this picture starts to form in your head. A perfect image of him with this new person, laughing, glowing, moving on like you never even mattered. But here's the truth. That's not real. That's a fantasy. And you're feeding that fantasy every time you believe it's the full story. What if I told you that the most powerful move you can make right now is not to chase him, not to beg for answers, not to send the emotional text, but to take a step back and let him watch you shine from a distance? See, people are addicted to attention. They thrive off knowing someone still wants them. And when he walks away, there's a part of him that expects you to fall apart. There's a part of him that hopes you'll spiral, that you'll keep texting, keep reacting, keep proving that you're still emotionally hooked. But when you don't, when instead you go quiet, not out of spite, not as a game, but because you're choosing peace, that silence speaks volumes. That's when he starts noticing. Because here's what happens. When you begin focusing on you, your energy, your routines, your circle, your goals, you create a life that radiates self-respect. You begin walking differently, speaking differently. Not because you're pretending, but because you're remembering your value. And when he sees that, he notices. It's not about revenge. It's not about showing him what he's missing. It's about you recognizing that the version of you who's desperate to make him see your worth is not the version that actually holds that worth. The real power comes when you no longer need him to see it, when you are so in tune with your own growth that whether or not he looks back becomes irrelevant. But here's the funny twist. That's exactly when he does look back. People always come back when they feel they've lost access to something valuable, and nothing triggers that realization faster than watching someone they used to know become someone they no longer have access to. He doesn't get to see your vulnerability anymore. He doesn't get to know what you're doing, how you're feeling, who you're spending time with. That mystery, that's powerful. It forces him to confront the idea that maybe, just maybe, he made a mistake. And let me be clear, we don't do this to manipulate. This isn't a game. This is you returning home to yourself. This is about becoming so lit up from within that no man, no relationship defines your sense of happiness. When you become that woman, not perform it, not pretend it, but become it, he starts feeling the void. The same presence he once took for granted becomes the absence that haunts his new reality. Because guess what? The someone else he left you for, she's not magic. She's not perfect. She's just different. And eventually, the excitement fades. Real life sets in. And when it does, the comparison begins. And that's when the weight of his decision starts to press on him. not because you told him to regret it. Every time you glow a little brighter, love yourself a little harder, build your world a little stronger, you're unintentionally holding up a mirror to him. And what he sees in that mirror isn't just you, it's who he was when he had you and who he became when he left. So don't underestimate your quiet confidence. Don't underestimate the power of disappearing from the stage while he's still watching, expecting a reaction. The absence of noise becomes the loudest message he could ever receive. The woman who doesn't chase, who doesn't beg, who doesn't compete with the new girl, she's unforgettable. Because in a world full of people needing closure, validation, attention, you became the rare one who walked away with dignity. You didn't make it about him. You made it about you. And there's nothing more attractive than that kind of peace. You want to know what makes it all fall apart for him? It's not your pain. It's your progress. It's not your tears. It's your transformation. When he sees the life you've built without him, not out of spite, but out of purpose, it hits different. Because suddenly he realizes you were never waiting. You weren't stuck. You moved on. And the moment he sees that is the moment the fantasy starts to crack. So stop wondering if he's happy. Stop asking if she's better. That's not your concern anymore. Your concern is creating a life that feels so good you no longer need to be part of his story because you're too busy writing your own. And when he finally looks back, all he'll see is a woman he can't reach, living a life that doesn't include him. Let him watch. He didn't leave you for someone better. He left because he thought he could. And that is such a crucial distinction. You see, when someone walks away, especially for someone else, it's so easy to internalize that and think, she must have had something I didn't. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe I was too much. Maybe if I had just said this, done that, been more like her. And suddenly we've handed over our entire sense of self-worth to someone else's poor decision. But here's the truth. People don't always leave because the new person is better. They leave because they think the dynamic with that new person will make them feel better. It's not about you. It's about how they feel about themselves in that new situation. And you might say, well, how is that supposed to make me feel any better? It should, because it reminds you that this wasn't a matter of someone replacing you with a superior model. This wasn't about someone finding a woman who is leagues above you. It was about a choice based on comfort, ego, fantasy, and often escapism. They were trying to escape something in themselves, and instead of facing it, they chose the distraction of someone new. Now here's where the real power shift happens. You don't become magnetic by proving anything to him. You become magnetic by deciding you're done trying to prove anything at all. The moment you stop making this about him, the moment you stop trying to understand his actions, compare yourself to her, or wish he'd regret it, is the moment you take back control. And control isn't about manipulation or revenge. It's about owning your life so fiercely, so beautifully, that you transcend the entire situation. Because becoming irreplaceable is not about being the most attractive person in the room. It's not about outshining the new girl. It's not about being louder or smarter or sexier. Becoming irreplaceable is about living in alignment with your worth. It's about building a life that reflects the truth of who you are, not the version of yourself someone else failed to appreciate. So what does that look like? It means you no longer beg for closure. You don't text. You don't snoop. You don't spiral every time you see a photo of them together. You walk forward, even if it's painful, because you know that walking forward is how you grow. You become irreplaceable when you invest in your passions again. You start doing things that ignite your spirit. You go to the gym not to get back at him, but to reconnect with your strength. You start spending time with people who remind you of your light. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into his story, and instead, you write your own. And let me tell you something. When someone leaves you for someone else, what they don't expect is for you to glow up emotionally. They might anticipate a physical glow up, the new haircut, the gym sessions, the wood rate change. But what really shakes them is the emotional transformation. The woman who no longer flinches at the thought of him. The woman who doesn't watch his stories, doesn't ask mutual friends about him, doesn't carry the weight of his absence like it defines her value. When he sees that the woman he left is now so grounded, so centered, and so unbothered that she doesn't even exist in the same energetic space anymore, that's when it starts to unravel. Because here's the twist. Most people who leave for someone else eventually circle back in some way. Sometimes it's a message, sometimes it's a vague apology, sometimes it's just them watching your story silently from the shadows, trying to see if they still matter to you. But when they do, when that message comes in or that call appears, what matters most is not that it came, but that you no longer need it. You become irreplaceable, not just to him, but to yourself. You look at your life and say, wow, I've built something beautiful here. I'm proud of who I've become. I didn't need him to see it, but now that he does, that's just a bonus. And let me be very clear. This isn't about pretending you're okay. It's about actually doing the work so that you are. Because when you're pretending, you're still waiting for him to notice. When you're actually doing the work, you couldn't care less if he ever does. You'll know you're becoming irreplaceable when you stop fantasizing about what it would feel like to have him regret it, and you start fantasizing about the incredible life you're creating without him. That's when everything changes. So no, he didn't leave you because you weren't enough. He left because he didn't recognize what he had. And that's not your burden to carry. Your only job now is to become the kind of woman who is so at peace with herself, so full of purpose and joy, that the idea of someone not choosing you doesn't even register as a loss anymore. Let him go. Let him watch. Let him regret. You rise.